So guys, so I think if you've been involved in Web3 for the past few years, you've probably seen like a lot of traditional brands and companies, being involved. And also like jumping on the hype of like NFTs, Metaverse recently. I've actually seen that, over 300 global brands have, launched some sort of like Web3 initiative recently. So I'm super excited to actually discuss the state of Web3 adoption by traditional brands and companies with the panelists here. But before we go there, I just wanted to ask the audience, do you guys have any NFT from any traditional brand? Very good, very good. What are the examples? What brand?
The little NFT.
Okay, very good, very good. Any other examples? Air Baltic, very good, very good. Okay.
Dom Perignon.
Butter bottle with ETH.
Very premium, very premium. Very premium.
Does a Prada bag count?
Which? Prada bag? Like the digital product passport?
No, it comes with the Aura chain thing.
Yeah, this.
Although it's very unclear, I still need to talk to them about that.
Yeah, this doesn't count. This doesn't count, okay. Okay.
Warner Music Group.
Warner Music?
Yes, like probably label, so individual artists.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, cool. So before we dive in, I would ask the panelists to briefly introduce yourself and also maybe touch on, what is your organization's involvement in Web3? So you can do it briefly. Starting with Rarible.
Yeah. Hey everybody, Jose here. I'm the BD lead at Rarible. You've probably heard of us. We're a NFT marketplace, but we're actually a lot more than an NFT marketplace. If you think of anything NFTs, we can essentially power it. And it could be on a RAS powered by Gelato, or it could be literally on any chain. So we're really going after just empowering brands, builders, developers of all kinds to create the next evolution, next generation of NFTs.
I'm Chris. I work at Gelato Marketing. I work multiple caps, including events. And I have a background in luxury marketing, worked at LVMH and Swarovski. So I have like those two perspectives, brands and Web3 degen-ness.
Hello, my name is Alissa Alekseeva. I'm the CMO and head of Web3 at Kuble. We're a digital marketing agency, and we have traditional clients and also Web3 clients, scoping from startups to enormous corporations. And in terms of the Web2 side, we help the corporations learn about Web3 and new technologies. And then on the startup side, on Web3, we help them reach their customers.
Yeah, I'm Ondrej. I'm also part of marketing team at Gelato.
Hey, Philipp again, BD at Polygon. I guess in the last cycle, we've been known for the enterprises that we've worked with, right? The likes of Starbucks or Nike. But it's interesting that now there's a new wave. And 2 days ago, he's actually here, Felix, I don't know whether he's in the room, right? Hugo launched 2 days ago, Lufthansa. So there are lots of brands in sports, FIFA, the ATP. So tons of them, but I think we're here today to talk about whether it actually worked or what needs to change.
Okay.
Hi guys, my name is Steffen. I'm with Lufthansa's Innovation Hub, which is the innovation unit of the Lufthansa Group, where I am, among other things, responsible for our blockchain project Uptp, which allows you to collect digital trading cards with each of your flights and use them on collections to redeem for rewards. Guess that's it.
Perfect. So to open it up, what do you guys think is the primary reason for a traditional Web2 companies to enter Web3? And we can start with Lufthansa.
So one of the reasons, probably to be honest, is to use the hype and the buzz, the PR that goes with the topic. Maybe something that's not mentioned too often, but I think for many brands, use cases, it's true. Also, maybe, especially in our case, as an innovation unit, to experiment with a new technology, try it out firsthand, right? If you want to be knowledgeable about something new that is coming up, I think you need more than just to read or write about it. You need to develop a smart contract, and then you see what's issues with UX and so on. And in our case, we also had with the product related, a very specific thing that we wanted to achieve, namely allow users to sell or trade their trading cards with everyone else. If some of you had Pokemon cards or Magic back in the days. You remember on the schoolyard, trading your cards with your friends was pretty awesome. So this is something we wanted to accomplish, which you could also accomplish with Web 2. And I think this is also, we heard it in some panels before, a question that is not asked too often at brand cases probably is, why do you use Web3? Is it actually adding technological benefit beside the buzz you want to use? Which is something I think we as the industry could or should be maybe also a bit more critical about.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Sorry, but to protocol, what exactly was the question?
What are the key reasons do you see as why Web2 companies would be entering, Web3, launching Web3 initiatives? What are the key reasons? Is it PR, hype, or is it really solving some business issues?
I would say there's little to add to what Steffen just said, right? But I think maybe something interesting that I can reveal from the conversations now that is very much different from the last cycle is that from a protocol side, we're not interested in empty use cases anymore, right? So what you see there is when an enterprise approaches us as a protocol, first of all, usually we need to tell them that we don't build a product, right? Lots of brands still approach us saying like, hey, we want to do something. Can you help us with it? And then I say, yeah, of course, we're infrastructure, but who do you work with, right? On the creative side. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, okay, so apparently you haven't done the education, right? You're willing to do something, but then also just making it a little bit spicy here, right? I think brands in particular, because there's a sexiness to brands, they have been perverted in the last bull cycle because still a certain percentage approach infrastructure asking how much money do you give us? And then the question back is, what for? Right? You want to build something. Why do you want money from me? It's just because there's so much money in the market. And also nowadays you have new protocols, and for them it's the first cycle with 400 million, 500 million of VC money. And we see this all over again. So maybe there is some advantage when you've been around for a cycle. You also know, and so we're guilty of that as well, right? Which mistakes you don't want to do again. So every project that comes to us now, we're talking about KPIs, metrics, what objectives do you want to reach, right? So because we don't want to have another cycle of projects that are looking back not as successful as wished for.
Yeah, and maybe to you guys, I mean, do you see also maybe some of the Web3 initiatives or kind of the intent of why Web2 companies entering the Web3 space also as a way to maybe target the Web3 native audience rather than onboarding the traditional customers and kind of enhancing the experiences, is rather seeing like, okay, there's a lot of people in crypto, in Web3, and we want to target those, especially within the luxury segment, right? Because you see there is a lot of rich people who became wealthy in the Web3 space, right? Investing in crypto, etc. So especially for the luxury brands, it's going to be a great opportunity through those, products and, experiences to target those specific consumers.
Yeah, I'll have.
So I don't have like a, let's say, high-end fashion example. I do have more of like a toys and collectible example. So Rarible, we've been able to work with Mattel. They've got the whole like Hot Wheels Barbie collection and so forth. I think for product-oriented brands, they're really caring about product expansion and product innovation. So essentially, how do you take that IP and diversify it and do more with it in different ways? And NFTs are actually one manifestation of that. It's one avenue that I feel like so many companies that are IP rich haven't yet capitalized on. So I think it ties into product innovation specifically. And then the other side of it is how do you grow long-term revenue? And so in the case of Mattel, like if I were to sell a Hot Wheel at a big store, then it's only going to be one sale and I'm only going to make money one time. But if I sell you a collectible as an NFT and I build in royalties, I'm now literally making money off of every single sale that happens thereafter, regardless of whatever effort from a marketing standpoint, etc. I put in. So it unlocks new revenue possibilities for the long term without any further marketing investment from the company's behalf. And so I'm not going to talk about exactly how much money Mattel made, but I would say they made a pretty significant amount to the point that they've literally doubled the team that's actually dedicated to Web3. And so we've seen a successful example there. And I think that product innovation and the revenue expansion side of things, I feel like that's going to be the long-term true driver, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to add to that, for brands, for companies, it makes a lot of sense to sell NFTs from a business perspective, right? You're making huge margins, it's digital collectibles. You may or not commit to having utility. If you don't commit to having utility, then it's like just, hey, buy my thing, and I'm making 99% margin on it. Yay, it's beautiful case study for me. However, you really gotta think about what you're bringing to market if you're considering the Web3 as a market. In the case of Louis Vuitton, for example, they launched the Via Trunk, right, which is like sort of a VIP program for Web3 natives, unlocking access to exclusive products. And there it's cool, right, because you're tapping into a consumer segment who may not want to cash out because it has taxes implications, just want to consume in their environment. Then it's perfect, right? But you got to also think about where you're selling. Is it, okay, here, membership, then I have to commit on the long term to delivering utility and actually delivering value back to those people as well through exclusivity, etc. So you really got to be committed and know that your organization has that commitment with you, right? Because we all know of companies where leadership, changed, and then they were like, okay, we're not doing Web3 anymore. And then it's a PR crisis, right? So a lot of brands rushed into the space in 21, 22, and didn't really measure, how the market would turn, right? It's really tough to sell into Web3 now, and didn't really measure how much commitment and strategy that would imply as well. So I'm cautious with considering Web3 as a market, especially today.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed a lot in the last 2 years. It's really kind of nosedived a little bit in terms of like, how can you create an NFT community and how can you make it a sustainable business? So there is that aspect of like, cool, Mattel made a bunch of money, but what are they doing with that now and how are they nurturing that community? Because that is a business in itself. And so what we've been seeing is that, from our point of view in traditional clients creating a metaverse space, for example, they would create it and then they would think that, okay, cool, we did this and now we're in Web3, so everybody's going to come and interact with us. And that's really not the case. Like, it becomes a new medium, it becomes a new segment of the business that you have to nurture, and you really have to think about it from like a completely different point of view. Like, you now have to run a separate business to be able to make this sustainable. It's not like just a one-hit PR post and then you're in Web3. It really has to be a business that you nurture.
Yeah, so we've heard a lot about the sustainability of the Web3 initiatives, and Philipp, you mentioned that you've worked with companies like Lufthansa, Starbucks, Disney, Nike, right? So how would you characterize the Web3 adoption today? After your experiences and after a few years of the hype that kind of died off a little bit, where are we now?
Yeah, I think the consumer space is a tough one in a sense that we've seen product market fit in other areas, but not consumer crypto. But I think it's just a matter of time, so we need these iterations. And I think, Steffen, for example, can talk a little bit to, starting a project and then iterating on it over some time, right? How that can be successful. So I think there are companies out there that have pivoted while they've been in the space for some time already. They understand that there's a lot of potential, but they also understand that they need to invest. Investing means, right, there's a new technology out there, and it's normal that as a company you invest first before you can reap rewards, right? So I think that understanding now that, crypto is not such a hype anymore and it's not about quick money, now you see which companies are in it for the long term and who has actually understood what's in it. So for example, I don't know, using it as basically cookies, right? So that you understand there's a lot of it in it, or companies that realize they can actually extend their business model now into the digital realm and they haven't done so yet. So I think there are lots of really interesting examples, but the product market fit, hopefully, in this cycle will be proven. And if not, it's going to take another one.
I can also jump in. So we also have traditional clients like UBS, for example, is one of them, that come to us to educate them about what's going on in tech and Web3, for example. So companies like that, we walk them through the whole thing. So a couple years ago, we did an initiative for them where we walked them through how to create a MetaMask wallet, how to get on Decentraland, and then we made them mint NFTs and then showcase those NFTs on Spatial. And the entire process was so lengthy that they were just like, not yet. So for us, we're seeing like big corporations like that testing, and they're definitely interested in Web3, and it's still too techy.
So one of the things that we've seen, and one of the biggest pitfalls for brands entering Web3, is they come in product first, community second. And we're seeing a bit of a shift happening right now where companies are thinking community first, product and revenue second. And so in our opinion, we feel like the ones that are going to see true success are those that either transfer over communities or launch new communities. And instead of coming in and saying, how are we going to extract revenue? How are we going to extract money from this community? Rather be like, hey, how are we going to bring the value of our company, our IP, et cetera, to drive more community, to drive more engagement? And then as a result, right, at some point down the road, they get to see that revenue coming back. And so, back to Phil's point, that could be a form of investment for the company. You don't necessarily have to quantify it as in like, hey, we're going to put in X amount of money into the tech infra, whatever it is. But literally you put in marketing resources and marketing dollars into a particular initiative to create community. That's an investment in and of itself. And I see so many companies now taking marketing dollars and taking marketing value and like getting equity in exchange, or like using it as currency. So use your marketing as currency, create community, and then revenue is going to fall.
So in the morning, we heard Hilmar talking a little bit about the tokenization of the loyalty programs, the loyalty points, and Steffen, you launched the Uptp, the Web3 powered loyalty program at Lufthansa. So I want to ask, what are the benefits of Web3 powered loyalty program versus the traditional one like Miles and More, for example, and also like what are the typical challenges for Web2 company to actually launch a Web3 initiative? Because I've been talking to a lot of corporations and brands over the past few years, and it's a lot of onboarding and education internally to kind of help people understand like what could be the benefits, right, and why they should even do it, right? The management and getting a lot of support behind those initiatives.
So when we started Uptp, the hope was really clear that with the NFTs we could foster the trading of users of the trading cards. We did it so that not every Uptp trading card per se is an NFT. It's all a Web2 application at first, but you can then optionally mint your card as an NFT, which gives you, so we thought, a very high additional benefit as a user, because only if you mint the card as an NFT, you can send it to a friend, trade it or sell it on any marketplace. But what we then actually saw, the sad reality is very different, that Web3 adoption is quite not there yet. And if you look up Uptp on OpenSea or Rarible, of course, you will see that currently there's 4,000 cards minted on the blockchain. 300 users, owners in total have these NFTs. The reality is that we have 70,000 users that sign up and use the application, and we have over 800,000 cards in our system at all. So less than a percentage of users moved into the Web3 rabbit hole and seemed it worthwhile to get the card as an NFT to be able to trade or not. So yeah, that's I think underestimating the challenge of adding a useful, meaningful case to your brand's application that makes it worthwhile for the user to educate themselves, or you have to educate them. And yes, nowadays you can add a lot of abstraction layers to make it a bit more easier, but I'd say also this has a certain limit to it. So this is probably one of the biggest biggest pitfalls and challenges the estimation and perception you have to what it will enable you, and the harsh reality you're going to encounter when you look at your users. And if you look on-chain numbers on Starbucks or all the other brands, you will find pretty similar numbers, like below 1% of the actual user base moved on-chain or did real Web3 interaction.
I think a very sobering reality too about NFTs is that we're way past the era of like $1,000 for an NFT. We are now in a world where, in the work we're doing with Web2 brands, the average price is $9. Convert it to whatever you want to convert it to. But I mean, I think I get excited about that because it means that NFTs are becoming more accessible. I don't even like calling them NFTs actually, but that could be a whole debate in and of itself. They're products on chain. That's what NFTs are. So if you want to bring your products on chain, bring them on chain. That's just one way you can bring them on chain as, but they don't have to be super overpriced. They could be very low price, high volume, and accessible in that way.
And Jose, you mentioned the royalties being kind of an important part of the business model for the Web2 companies entering the Web3 space. But we've also seen like royalties being quite a lot disrupted by new marketplaces that have been launched the last few years. So how do you see, this evolution, impacting the appetite for the brands to join Web3, and how it kind of impacted you as a Rarible as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have a two-part answer to that. So the technical answer is you can now embed royalties at the smart contract level. So regardless of whether smart contract goes, you're not bound to that particular marketplace and whether or not they're going to pay you out on the royalties. But then from a go-to-market standpoint, what we ended up doing at Rarible is we just gave them a marketplace. We said, like, don't be at the mercy of whatever big marketplace is going to give you. So like, if I'm not going to name the marketplace, but if one marketplace were to stop supporting royalties, like, don't let that affect you, right? And so what we're doing with Mattel, McFarlane Toys, these different brands is like, hey, get your own marketplace. We're just going to build it for you from scratch, and it's going to be exactly what you want it to look and feel like, with single sign-on, fiat on-ramp, whatever it is, and royalties embedded and supported.
So, Alissa, you've been working with a lot of brands creating immersive experiences, metaverse experiences with Lalik and insurance companies. So what would be your advice for a Web2 company that is considering entering Web3 but is not really ready to go all in yet? Right? Just wants to test the waters a little bit and still be conservative, but wants to have the exposure and kind of be kind of manage the risk when entering the Web3 space.
Yeah, I think part of that answer is about the audience that you're speaking to. So you're right, Steffen, to say that the Web3 audience is still very small, and it's a very difficult job to onboard Web2 users who are not Web3 coherent to try to use your product if they just haven't. So it's about the advice that I would give to Web2 brands trying to get into the space is, how can you attract the Web3 consumer and what value can you bring them? Because right now it's like, okay, cool, so we have a product on chain. So, or cool, we have a metaverse. So what value does it bring to the end consumer? So an example could be, if you do have a metaverse space, you could create curated experiences for anonymous users. Because say you're a bank, for example, we've done a couple of bank spaces where they can display their digital assets and their actual offering, their actual crypto offering of their products. They can display that, and then they can have private meetings in this metaverse space where their super wealthy clients don't have to show their face. And that's a great use case, because then they can interact with each other if they want. You could create like an event just for super VIPs, or it could be a one-on-one experience with a client advisor. So there are use cases. If you're already in this space and if you have a captive audience, it's not about onboarding Web2.
If I can add to that, risk in venturing into Web3 for brands, it's a big challenge, right? It's like, how do we go into Web3, do something cool, but also not risk too much? And I think Mercedes did something that mitigates risk, right? They worked on Machina, which is a generative art project, and through that you're not committing to any utility. You're just like using the essence of your brand and infusing it into a generative art algorithm that will just output cool stuff, and people are going to appreciate it for what it is, and that's it, right? So not committing to anything is also something you can do, right? But then you got to sell your NFTs, and in this market it's not easy. So what you can do, however, is harness existing Web3 communities, right? So I'll give that example. I keep talking about doodles. My team is fed up with it. But you can see here I have a watch, right? It's a J-Shock, but it's a J-Shock with Doodles branding. Doodles is a Web3 native brand with a good community engaged, and J-Shock, for example, collaborated with Doodles to sell physical J-Shocks, unlocking linked NFT collectibles that you can then wear on your digital avatar. So you have a physical product, not moving too far away from the core business, and then you just like add a little bit of a digital aspect to it, and then people from the community bought it because they're fans, right? So that's like onboarding Web3 sort of risk-free by harnessing an existing community. And then the challenge on the flip side is more like, how do you actually onboard your existing customer base, fan base to Web3 where they don't really see the point? And I really think with AI, we've had that breakthrough use case product with ChatGPT where everybody saw the tech was ready, it was seamless, and then everybody saw the benefit of using ChatGPT. We all do now. In only a few months we did, right, of launching. We still aren't there yet with Web3 products. So, and also with the Web2 consumer mind, like people don't see the point really of owning assets or stuff like that. So hopefully, as Philipp said, we hit it in that cycle.
I just want to add, I thought at Lufthansa you guys tokenized your rewards program. Was that a thing that you did? No? Okay, never mind. Not yet. We can talk later.
What's something about the stickers in your Revolution? In something.
Yeah, no, I posted about it. It's just
controversy.
You can find it on Lentkin. I was very and I was super excited to see like when Lufthansa launched I was very excited. I have the app.
I thought it was the best use case, actually.
Yeah, because I think when it comes to Web2 brands and Web3, I think very often we hear like the loyalty is the use case, right? For Web2 brands, like tokenized loyalty, tokenized points. And I think for me personally, the Miles and More is basically, I think, the only loyalty program that I actually use, right? So I think this is probably common for many people, right? So the travel, Miles and More, the Miles is perhaps one of the biggest loyalty programs that exists, right? So seeing Lufthansa kind of entering the space and trying to, bring Web3 into the loyalty was, I think, very exciting. But I think, it might be just a little bit too early or not very clear for people, like what are the benefits, right? As you mentioned. But also, I think there was a lot of excitement about, the Starbucks. When Starbucks launched the Odyssey, the Web3 powered loyalty program, because I think Starbucks is also the company with perhaps the biggest loyalty program in the world, if I'm not mistaken. So, when they announced that they are launching, a dedicated Web3 powered loyalty program, there's a lot of excitement, especially among the Web3 community. But sadly, they have announced in the past few months that they are actually sunsetting the Odyssey platform, so it will no longer exist. So I want to ask Philipp, what were the learnings, and what is maybe the reason that why Starbucks decided to discontinue Odyssey, and what are the learnings for you and for Starbucks from this initiative?
Right. So first of all, I think to my point in the beginning that we don't build a product, right? I can't speak for Starbucks. They can also build on the infrastructure without telling us and shutting down without telling us, right? So I don't want to speak directly to Starbucks. But I think in general, what's really important is that you need to find a way how the technology fits your business model, right? When you're a brand, you have a mission and you have a business model. And I think to Alissa's point, you shouldn't just, you can do a hype thing, and just show innovativeness, say we use blockchain, but then if it doesn't have any usefulness to your mission, then why do you do it, and will it be successful in the long term? So I think that's the most important learning, and that is also should be the starting point for any brand. How does it fit our business model? And I think lots of projects actually have struggled to answer that question. So you already see that maybe they should start all over again. That's how I see it, right? But then I think what is really interesting in consumer crypto is we all see that there is something in the direct-to-consumer communication channel, right? So we had we still have so many middlemen always in between a brand and the end consumer. And crypto gives you that opportunity to own that channel again, right? Whether you build that channel via loyalty, right? Via gaming, via payments, right? So for example, that's also why I was super excited about Coinbase launching their smart wallet, because also, Alissa, to your point, the infrastructure sometimes is the problem that a brand has. Not that they're doing the wrong thing, it's just like, if I can't interact properly with a brand, right, it's just not fun, it's not seamless, so I won't do it. So sometimes you're just too early, right? So I think it's a combination of lots of things. You need to have the business plan in place, but then also the environment needs to be right and the timing needs to be right. So hopefully this is now.
I think from the conversations we've been having is it may seem like the crypto is like super niche segment, right? But I checked, and I think there's like 700 million people that actually hold crypto, right? So you could also argue it's not really a niche anymore, right? 10% of the global population has crypto. So I don't think we're in such a niche segment anymore. So my question would be, what is actually needed for more Web2 brands to come into the Web3, considering there is potentially 600 million people that own crypto, and there's going to be many more millions coming into in the next few years? Maybe we start with you, Chris.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I really believe that we're getting to a point where, or we're going to get to a point where we have the infrastructure, the tech getting better and better in terms of giving less friction, right, to the users, and then also the users understanding more and more why some things matter with blockchain underneath, right? And then eventually you're going to have at the middle that breakthrough use case where everyone's going to click, and then that's going to change everything, right? And we're getting there with infrastructure. We have brands like companies. It's hard to also really launch a Web3 product with the friction internally, right? Like you may have some compliance issues, it's like a lot of things you need to do internally, like make sure the chain is up to your tailored needs. And with like an app chain, for example, you can basically just like fine tune whatever you need, make sure it's like up to your compliance standards, and then launch it, right? So it's like really frictionless internally. And then for the user experience on the user side, you also need to provide a frictionless experience for them to actually use your product. And now with blocks like account abstraction or sponsoring gas, this kind of things, then you can abstract completely the blockchain experience that we all know and have hated at some point, so that the user is like not feeling outside of their environment, right? So like on the tech side, these things are much needed. And then once we just have like the right use case, it's going to click for the consumer, and then everything's going to change. So I'm looking forward to that very much.
One thing that I would add in there. So part of my background, I used to come from like big consumer brands and then ended up doing startup stuff. And one thing that I realized selling in startups is like literally driving organizational change. That's what you do. And so sometimes literally the decision-making cycle of a Web2 big enterprise brand was the runway of the startup. And so I think for me, innovation and change and adoption starts with decision-making and how decisions are made within an organization. If there's a lot of politics involved, it doesn't matter what tech you embrace, you're not even going to make a decision about the tech. And so I think it's a matter of like challenging and pushing forward how decisions are made at an organizational level. Are you delegating enough and trusting somebody, or maybe a head of innovation, whatever it is, to go ahead and try things, and creating the right sandbox to make that happen? So you don't have to go risk your entire consumer base. Like literally at Rarible, one thing we offer is to tap into our 1 million users. Like, let's start with our user base. You're not going to risk anything. You're not going to touch your consumer set. Just like do something with our user base. We'll risk our user base because we know they're going to be open to it. So it's realizing that decision making can be very much simplified if you just create the right sandbox and you empower the right people.
Yeah, I think the simple answer is just to switch the thinking from the tech and trying to sell the tech, and switch it to the consumer. What does the consumer want? How do we give consumer value? How do we solve their problems? And I think that's how we onboard Web3. I'll give you an analogy. Because we've all been in this space for so long, we understand like what Bitcoin is, what Ethereum is, how they're built, what Polygon is, what layer 1, layer 2 means. So for us, it's kind of like, okay, like I get it. But remember when you started? You did not. And like, I'll give you this analogy that I just started doing like pram research. Do you guys know what Nuna is, Upper Baby, Joey? You know? Yeah, exactly. Imagine you're starting research from scratch, just getting into Web3. There's one person in the room that knows, and that's it. And like, that's the challenge in onboarding Web3, or Web2 to Web3, that it's a whole bunch of research that you have to do to understand even like remotely what's going on. So as soon as we focus on the customer versus the tech, I think things will get easier.
All right, guys. So I think we ran out of time. So I'd like to thank all the panelists for the great contribution. So thank you very much.